Today, we'll look at two horrifying cave tragedies that ended in horror. The first story is about cavers who tried to stay alive by keeping warm, but tragically died because they became too warm. The second story is truly horrifying because you'll witness how a simple and ordinary accident turned into a tragic and terrifying disaster. Imagine slipping through a narrow, jagged cave entrance on Indonesia's Sulawesi island in 2014. Outside, the tropical air is thick, hot, and humid, with mist curling above the dense jungle. The ground is slick with moisture, and a thrill of anticipation runs through your veins. You step into a world where darkness presses against every surface, and every tiny movement echoes endlessly. A labyrinth patiently carved over years by water and time, untouched, silent, and indifferent to human ambition. Among those daring, or perhaps reckless enough to enter were Rafik Arjuna, 26, an experienced caver known for careful planning and patience; Mika Tanaka, 24, a thrill seeker and amateur photographer obsessed with capturing rare cave formations; Hendro Wirawan, 27, a local guide intimately familiar with Sulawesi's caves, relaxed around small risks; and Sinta Dewi, 25, a fearless adventurer who thrived on improvisation. All four were driven by curiosity, adrenaline, and the promise of discovering a cave few had ever seen. For hours, they crawled, climbed, and squeezed through sharp rock passages, enduring minor scratches and bruises. The group finally reached a relatively spacious chamber, a rare sanctuary within the narrow tunnels, and decided to spend the night there. Despite the tropical heat outside, the cave's air was cold and damp, chilling their skin. In the chamber's center, they built a small fire to provide warmth, comfort, and light, thinking it a harmless precaution to make the night bearable. They didn't realize the cave's limited airflow and oxygen balance could turn their simple plan into a deadly trap. The fire flickered, casting shadows on the limestone walls, creating almost lifelike dancing silhouettes. The sweet, smoky scent of burning wood mingled with the cave's earthy odor. The flame warmed them, but slowly consumed the limited oxygen around them, a silent, invisible threat. At first, they laughed, shared stories, and photographed one another, unaware that an unseen danger was creeping closer. A gas, invisible but lethal, was beginning to dominate the space. As night deepened, subtle discomforts emerged: shortness of breath, light dizziness, mild headaches, initially dismissed as fatigue, excitement, or the effort of maneuvering in tight spaces, were actually the first warning signs. Oxygen was depleting, carbon monoxide was building up, and the fire was drawing what little air remained upward. In enclosed spaces like this, such a combination could quickly become deadly. Survival was no longer about skill or strength. It depended entirely on luck and timing. Rafik was the first to notice nausea and a headache. Mika's face grew pale and tense, while Hendro rubbed his temples, clearly uncomfortable. Sinta, meanwhile, adjusted her camera angles for a dramatic shot, oblivious to the creeping danger. Thick smoke began accumulating near the ceiling, slowly descending toward the floor, masked by the flickering light, a suffocating layer that filled the chamber invisibly. When the first coughs erupted, panic set in. Every breath felt heavy, lungs burning, as they realized they had unknowingly created their own prison hours earlier. Desperation surged. Rafik attempted to crawl toward the narrow passage leading back to the main tunnel, calling the others to follow. But coordination faltered, dizziness disoriented them, smoke stung their eyes, and movement became agonizing. One by one, 3 of the group collapsed, unconscious before they could react. Only Sinta pressed on, driven by determination and fear. She crawled inch by inch over the uneven floor, her body slick with sweat, lungs burning from smoke inhalation, a fight for survival with every movement. Her friends lay unconscious, victims of an invisible, relentless killer. The passage seemed endless. Every turn, every sharp edge threatened to stop her. Yet Sinta pressed on, clinging to the hope of escape. She could feel the residual warmth from the fire on the cave floor and the pressure of smoke above her. Her senses, sharpened by fear, scanned every rock, crack, and potential handhold. Have you ever felt utterly helpless? Watching from the comfort of your home, how would this scene make you feel? Time was distorted. Seconds stretched like hours. The cave's confined reality and the deadly combination of oxygen depletion and fire etched into her every nerve. Survival was no longer an adventure. It was raw, primitive endurance. Finally, she emerged into open air. Her lungs burned, her body trembled. The night sky stretched infinitely above, stars cold and sharp. A world of light and freedom after hours trapped in darkness and smoke. Yet the relief was bitter. Her 3 friends had perished in the cave, victims of a small, deadly mistake. In such an environment, no level of skill or experience could guarantee safety. Rescue teams arrived later, expertly navigating the narrow passages and clearing fallen debris when needed. They found Rafik, Mika, and Hendro unconscious, unrecoverable, amid lingering smoke and embers. The small fire, meant for comfort, had become a lethal agent. A cold lesson in the hidden dangers of fire in confined, poorly ventilated spaces. Research and reports following the incident highlighted the deadly combination of fire, oxygen depletion, and enclosed spaces. What seemed like a simple precaution carried consequences of staggering severity. Even small decisions in extreme exploration can determine life or death. Imagine crawling through a smoke-filled chamber, watching friends collapse one by one, dragging your own body toward freedom. Escape measured in inches and seconds, while the invisible killer, oxygen consumed by fire, air filled with carbon monoxide, remains silent, invisible, and utterly effective. Adventure can become disaster in the blink of an eye. Cinta, resting outside the cave, shivered and gasped, carrying the weight of the night. The trauma was physical and mental. Fire, smoke, panic, and the loss of friends left scars that would never fully heal. It was a vivid, horrifying reminder that exploration, beauty, and human curiosity must always be balanced with caution, preparation, and awareness of the environment. Even a small fire placed in the wrong spot can become a deadly trap. This story became a cautionary tale in the global extreme caving and adventure community. It teaches that enclosed spaces with potential hazards are inherently dangerous, that oxygen levels and ventilation can never be underestimated, and that even experienced adventurers are vulnerable to invisible threats. Planning, safety protocols, and constant vigilance are essential. Every explorer must remember, beneath the surface lies a world that is beautiful, mesmerizing, and deadly. Curiosity alone is not enough. Respect, preparation, and awareness are vital to surviving the unseen dangers that lurk in the dark. In the second story, 3 female cavers come face to face with death. On the morning of October 25, 2022, at the entrance of Cuevas del Drach in Spain, the leaves rustled gently, and the scent of iodine drifting from the sea filled the air. Outside, the weather was calm, but no one imagined how heavy time could become inside. Angela, Gabrielle, and Megan, with the casual ease of an early hour, checked their gear and adjusted their helmets with the simple intention of making an ordinary exploration. They were eager, they cared about each other, they were friends. Everything was ordinary when they set out for topic. The hour was early, the air was mild, the team was in sync, seemed to echo in step with the silent rhythm of their footsteps. Their plan was short and clear: to follow a nearby route, take a few notes, photograph the patterns of stalactites and stalagmites, and return before noon. But one small detail was overlooked. Instead of carrying a backup guide rope and marking the return path clearly, they left the rope in the car and chose to rely only on a small piece of chalk. At that moment, the choice seemed trivial. The sun slipped softly between gray clouds. The shadows stretched lazily, and nothing seemed urgent. The first meters were easy. The steady drip of water accompanied them like a metronome, and the wet reflections on the walls flickered like tiny pools in the beam of their lamps. Only a few signs appeared: a slightly loosened buckle, a dimming light, the cap of the chalk falling into the mud. None of them lingered on these things. Not yet. As the path narrowed, they moved in single file. Angela first, then Gabrielle, Megan last. Heads lowered, knees pressed into mud, their breathing fell into one tempo. The walls grew darker, their surfaces gleamed like polished skin, Words diminished, gestures increased. At a tight turn, Megan heard the small scrape of her backpack buckle against stone. She adjusted it, smiled, and said, "Let's go." There was no hint in that sound that it would be the prelude to a greater silence. Beneath a rippled ceiling, they moved even lower. Pressure on their knees increased, shoulders bent at unnatural angles. Patience became more precious. Then, in a narrow passage, it happened. Megan misplaced her footing, lost her balance, and a sharp pain spread through her left wrist. A short cry escaped her lips. At once, everyone's breathing quickened. Panic's thin hand touched their shoulders. Hearts shifted rhythm and began to race. "Stop! Breathe! Calm!" said Angela. Gabrielle looked around and whispered, "We should go back." The words were short. The looks were long. Inside, every sound grew larger against the walls. Even the smallest whisper returned like its own shadow. The air grew heavy. The lamps misted. Each breath consumed the chamber faster. Time turned into an enemy. The way back blurred. Was it the corridor they entered, or another? A few steps forward, 2 steps back, forward again. Nothing seemed certain. Visibility dropped to 0. Megan winced but had to stand. The other 2 supported her, moving slowly. Outside, birds sang. Inside, the sound of heartbeats struck the rock. At one point, they searched for the rope they thought they had left. Darkness, muddy water, identical walls concealed everything. The guideline was the only thread tied to the surface. When they could not find it, words shortened, sentences broke off, looks said more. They lost time entering a wrong passage. When they returned, everything looked the same. Names fell to whispers, steps fell to whispers, even hope fell to whispers. Every inch was a battle. Strength mattered, but patience mattered more, and patience required time, and time was running out. "Wait, listen to the walls first, then we try again," said Angela. They stopped, tried to slow their breathing. They wanted to mark the path, but the chalk was wet. The marks vanished. The trembling of the lights shook their courage. Endurance meant pretending not to see the flicker. A deep rumble echoed somewhere ahead. Perhaps a falling stone, perhaps shifting water. What mattered was not what it was, but how it felt. Fragility, loneliness, a closing weight. Panic began. Light failed, silence, then rumble. They felt smaller than they were. The stones loomed larger. Outside, a friend waiting grew alarmed when the promised message never arrived and called for help. Local authorities began to mobilize. Inside, minutes became like cold shadows settling on stone. "We must find the rope," said Angela. She felt along the wall until her fingers touched a thin line. She pulled, stuck, tried again, it moved, they tied themselves to it. Inches at a time, with method, with cold blood. Sometimes it isn't muscle that carries a person, but the few simple words exchanged between them. Gabrielle tested the way ahead. Angela supported Megan from behind. Every inch was a battle. The passages lowered, helmets scraped the ceiling, knees trembled more, cold seeped into their clothes and slowed their minds. Once, the light dimmed again. The light in their hearts thinned with it. A small neglect, a great cost. Near the exit, in a wider chamber, distant lights appeared. Short, steady voices called, "I'm Geordie, I'm Lara." Their words were calm, firm, steady. "We'll do this together." Rescue had arrived, and even in that confined space, their presence brought relief. They secured a stronger line, tied the 3 to it, set a rhythm. Pull, stop, move. For the first time inside, the 3 breathed easier. Still, air was thin, cold pressed on them, fatigue weighed down. In that stretched out time, even a single step felt endless. Yet a step had to be taken. Lights steadied, gazes met again. "Go," they said. Megan's voice wavered, sometimes faint, sometimes whispering. "I'm here." Sometimes a single word made the climb bearable. Geordie and Lara wrapped the team, guided them to safer ground, covered Megan with a blanket, tried to warm her hands and keep her face open to air. Yet sometimes the world flows in 2 speeds. Outside the clock moves as usual. Inside every second expands. Every minute grows heavier. time turned into an enemy. Outside, preparations rushed. Inside, the three fought toward the surface with small but steady moves. When the way to daylight appeared, a faint brightness spread inside them. That brightness was as real as fatigue, as stubborn as slowness. Each step toward the light widened the air, broadened the sounds, made the lines on stone familiar. But not all stories end with hope. Some days, no matter the effort, silence prevails. By the end of that day, despite every attempt, Megan's breath grew thin and stopped. Touches were soft, words respectful. No one shouted, because caves do not like shouting. The cave was silent. When Angela and Gabrielle emerged, the wind struck their faces as if for the first time. The sun shone lower over the sea. Shadows stretched long. In their eyes, a sentence was carved that would never fade. A small neglect, a great cost. When they held the spare rope in the car, a sting ran through their fingers. Too late a reminder, too late a lesson. Certain images replayed in their minds. The chalk without a cap, the dim light, the loose buckle, the collapsing silence. These are the small knots of memory. The more you touch them, the sharper they feel. That day, once again, it was understood. Inside, there are no shortcuts, no rushing. Inside, ego's voice bounces off the walls and falls back. A cave does not forgive impatience. It demands you weigh your steps, your words, your decisions. Sometimes the edge of a step, the weight of a phrase, the meaning of a look can guide more than a rope. Sometimes the absence of a rope is the clearest sign. This story reminds us, survival in a cave rests on simple but precise rules. 2 lights, 2 marks, 2 plans, and an early turnback point. Check everything twice before you go. Mark the return path in 2 clear and lasting ways. Always carry a spare light and rope. Turn back when tired. Send your beam before your body. When one grows weak, all adjust the pace. Lower your voice. Keep commands short. Let hope grow in the rhythm of your steps. They sound simple, because they are. And in a cave, simplicity is the core of life. Panic breath consumes air faster. It is not just a warning, but an observation to remember. Visibility dropped to 0. It is not only about darkness, but about the heart constricting, the tongue drying, the mind slowing when uncertainty grows. The guideline was the only thread tied to the surface. It is a truth that should shadow every decision. And when we say, every inch was a battle, what it means is this: not great heroics, but small, persistent steps, patient commands. Those carry life. Megan's name remained as a symbol of greater care in her friends' words. When drawing a route, they added pauses called Megan breaks, where everyone caught breath and cleared their gaze. Outside, the sea was the same sea, the wind the same wind, but within them, a line had shifted. Words lost in the cave's silence turned into more meaningful words outside. Sometimes loss tempts us to fill the void with quick sentences. Here, the answer was to strip them down. Let meaning grow heavier. The only way to soften the chain from the beginning is to take simple principles seriously and never say, "I'll do it later." This story tells everyone who enters a cave, preparation, care, and patience are not burdens but 3 good companions. Walk with them, and the path changes color, silence softens, darkness loses meaning. And yet, some days there will be losses. On those days, it is right to listen to the silence, speak the name with respect, and turn the lesson into action. At the end of that day, Angela and Gabrielle did just that as they looked out at the sea. In the steady rhythm of the waves hitting shore, they found their own inner rhythm.